first Koreans arrived between 1903 and 1905. Prior to this time period was the dynastic decline of the Joseon dynasty, wherein the government was not very efficient, it was corrupt, there was oppression, high taxation, and war. And so during the 1860s, people were trying to escape to either China or Russia by crossing frozen rivers, although back then it was illegal to leave Korea. In 1882, the Korean-American Treaty was the first treaty of Korea with a Western country. In this treaty was Article 1, which was the Good Offices Clause. The President of Korea relied on this article a lot and thought of the U.S. as Korea's big brother. This treaty also allowed for American ministers or ambassadors to come to Korea in 1883. They came with the diplomatic instructions of the notion that the U.S. would like to stay out of Korean domestic affairs. Dr. Horace Allen was one of the key figures in Korean immigration to the United States. He came to Korea in 1884 as a missionary. He basically felt sorry for Koreans, always being under the Chinese and then later the Japanese. He disagreed with the American policy of not getting involved, even when a country is trying to take over Korea, and so he created the dollar diplomacy, which opposed the policy of his own government. His economic interest of having American investments in Korea would then lead into political interests from the U.S. government. At about the same time, at the beginning of the 20th century, Hawaii became part of the United States, which means that Hawaii had to follow U.S. laws. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was one of these, which meant that they can't use Chinese workers anymore in their sugar plantations. The sugar plantation was the biggest industry in Hawaii then, and with 2/3 of workers being Japanese workers, they needed to have a mixed race of workers so that there is no union strike breaking going on against the plantation owners. Therefore, they needed a new set of strike breakers who are good workers, inexpensive, who won't go on strike, and who are stable. American brokers in Korea then recruited the first group of some 100 laborers, each eager to discover the American dream for himself.
Well, my great-grandparents, my Kojong 할머니, 할아버지, came in 1905 to Hawaii from Korea, and they came as sugarcane, pineapple field workers to Hawaii. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, and I'm fourth generation Korean American. 한국 사세. Okay, 시작.
Ethnic enclaves are accumulations of one particular ethnicity at one location. Most of the surrounding communities in the enclaves consist of businesses run by members of the ethnic groups. There are many ethnic enclaves in Washington state due to its diverse immigrant population. One of the immigrant populations that form ethnic enclaves are Korean immigrants. In the South Sound, Koreans have accumulated in 3 specific areas: Lakewood, Federal Way, and Tacoma. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the Korean population in 2000 was 2,244 in Lakewood City, 4,417 in Federal Way, and 2,748 in Tacoma. However, in both Tacoma and Lakewood areas, population dropped in 2010, 1,844 in Lakewood and 2,642 in Tacoma, with an increase in Federal Way at a population of 4,850 Koreans. In Lakewood, Korean immigrants became more prominent after several businesses expanded during the 1990s. One of the business owners that made expansion was the Han family. The family migrated to the U.S. in 1973. At first, they began their business as a tofu-making operation to provide to the few immigrants that lived in the area at that time. The Han family eventually expanded a few years after the 1990s and formed what is now the Han Plazas in Lakewood, Federal Way, and Edmonds, Washington. With the expansion, other Koreans as well as Asian immigrants established businesses and now formed the International Business District in Lakewood. Several businesses in the district are owned by foreign-born Koreans. In an article from the Lakewood Patch website, major plans for the International Business District in Lakewood are being proposed. The proposal includes building a shopping center posterior to the Han Plaza. In the article, writer Marquis Hunter wrote, Jae-han, Han's son, spoke to Patch about the upcoming project. The intent, he said, is to create a one-stop shopping center with a focus on Asian foods. Lakewood officials added that the project would provide additional retail, restaurants, structural parking, housing, and possibly a movie. It's the largest project in the district to date, Jae-han said. We're trying hopefully for this project to take off. The Hans were among the first Korean business owners in Lakewood. Han immigrated to the U.S. in 1973 from Korea, his son said, adding that his father built the first Korean grocery market here. Now, the district has a strong Korean representation along South Tacoma Way.
Yo, give him away, you can touch us. 난 코끼리 하니까 너 다쳐.